Question Veritas, with honor, respect, and gratitude, everyone. We welcome you to the SunCast Podcast with Lauta of the Sun and Tavares of the Sun. It has been quite some time, so it feels good to be back.
In La Question Veritas, and honor, respect, and gratitude, Tavares.
Honor, respect, and gratitude.
Very happy to be back in spring. It's April 2022, and happy to be back here.
Yes. New life, right?
Yes, that's right.
New life. So we also have a unique situation. We are doing this live in person, so we have a few people as an audience. Yeah. Cue clap. Thank you all for participating. That's hilarious. And then we also have the Instagram Live. So this is exciting, doing something new. And I'd like to briefly share the broad brushstrokes of today's topic. So we're talking about transhumanism / transgender, transsexuality, and how that impacts the divine feminine, and not just the feminine, but all life on the planet, the natural order of things, and the association or influence of this agenda with what we refer to as anti-life. It's pretty much the influence that we've seen in the background that has been responsible for this direction that we've been going to that is ultimately self-destruction. So to me, it's interesting when you think about the darkness, they're always hijacking something.
Before we do this, can we call for the truth?
Actually, let's do that.
Okay.
Call for the truth.
Shall we call for the truth? Shall we call to see the truth in this time where things are not as they seem to be? Shall we call to hear the truth? Shall we have the ear for what is true? Shall we have the courage to speak the truth in a time of lies? Shall we ask for the truth to come into our experience? Shall we have nothing less than the truth? Shall we call for the power of the divine feminine to come back into our world, into us, and into all of the situations in our lives, with honor, respect, and gratitude as the way to balance? Shall we call for the power of the divine feminine to come back into our world with balance as the way, with honor, respect, and gratitude? Shall we call for the power of the divine feminine to bring balance back into our world with the way, which is honor, respect, and gratitude? And yes, you were saying.
Thank you. I have noticed that darkness apparently likes to hijack movements, and I've seen this time and time again. The disenfranchisement of so-called Black people, where that has went, and even this idea of transhumanism or the transgender, and there is lobbying and there is this push for this influence within our society. And may we make a disclaimer?
Yes.
Honor, respect, and gratitude to all life. And we are in respect of free will out of the sun.
Yes.
You know, it is only problematic when the coercion and the force of that's being placed upon our children, the influence there, and also impacting our freedom of speech. Once our rights begin to be infringed upon, that's when it becomes a problem. So you're free to do what you want, but we're free to respond how we respond. That being said, I noticed that there is a link between the idea of transgenderism and then transhumanism to move us into this idea. And what I was saying about the hijacking, so I understand that on the planet, we are about to unify. We know the truth that male and female exists within everyone. We understand that is actually coming back, the balance of that. But what I'm seeing in terms of the hijacking is darkness trying to ride the current of what's to come and distort it. And we're, I mean, there's so much more I could say about it, but I'm going to stop there because that's ultimately what I'm seeing, where there's this hijacking of the truth, a distortion of it, and along with that, this agenda of anti-life and moving us into transhumanism. So, Lotsa, do you have well, I know you do. I know you have many thoughts regarding this idea, but would you help paint the appropriate perspective of what's really happening in the background, all the pieces of study, and most importantly, the history, because this isn't an overnight thing that's just been happening for a decade. This has been happening for millennia.
Yes.
So would you speak on that?
Yes. I am so thankful that for the ones who are here with us, and for you, and for all of those who are making this happen, and all who are listening, to be in support of a forum where we may speak the truth. So anything we say about transhumanism or anything we say about transgender is in the middle of a paragraph of a story that's still being written, that started millennia ago. Our planet was inhabited by off-world beings who did not want life to exist as it exists. And we can see that even in the history that has been hijacked, because we can see that things that have been done to humanity are not anything that a rational being would do. We can see that many of the stories that were retold, the religious stories of, the angry gods and the vengeful gods and all the different masters of creation that we all were in allegiance with, and they even speak about the flaming chariots, they even talk about off-world visitors, all of these things. That's still not the beginning of the story, but it does give us a hint as to what was happening in the story. The fact that for all of the history that is known, there is no real record of women in any positions of power of any note. Through all of history, all of that has purposely been erased or made to not take place, which doesn't make sense. None of that adds up to anything. The fact that women are regulated to a life of sacrifice, and that men are the dominant factor and they run the world, and women are in service to men in a way that is inappropriate given the abilities that women have, and that their abilities have been shrouded, obfuscated, hidden, and undermined. Women have been killed and persecuted, and in this day babies are still being born that are killed because they're female. And in our world, we have not stopped that. The world we live in has not stopped for sure that that's happening. So we know that in certain countries, the population of the male children has tripled or quadrupled the size of the women because the female babies have been done away with. We know that many populations in the world do not have enough women to mate with now. After generations of doing this, they have no girls in the classrooms because they've been getting rid of the girls. We know that girls are being stolen off the streets in Europe and in all different countries in the world, and they're being sold into sex trade. We all are aware of this, and we all live in a world where no one is concerned about it. So the idea of men deciding that they will be women in women's arenas, like they come to a uterus party without a uterus. We're having a uterus party here, and you're showing up without a uterus. You got a cocktail of chemicals. That's not a uterus. So you want to play uterus games, like reindeer games, but you don't have
uterus parts
without all the parts.
Yeah.
I think the bigger thing to understand is that gender is law. And the reason we know it's law is that creation tells us that. So we know that Mother Earth gestates all of life and is represented, as she's called, Mother Earth, because she's the mother, she's the feminine. And we could think of the sun as father, giving, directing information. So both are divine characteristics of creation, and one is not superior to the other. They are different. And those two come together in the same way we look at a plug and it goes into a wall and one receives and one gives, this is part of how creation works, and we see it in electricity. And the negative and the positive, we see it. These are two polarities of creation. It's quite clear. We cannot ignore that law because it's inconvenient for whatever our agenda is. So we are not in opposition to the very real casualty that has happened to our youth and to many people from the food and the influences of living in modern society, of the things that are on the internet, what's happening with artificial intelligence, what's happening with even the cartoons we put our children in front of. We know for sure, and there are lots of references on the internet of Disney officials even saying that they have an agenda to put forward transgender. They have an agenda to put forward homosexuality. They have an agenda to put forward things that are would be considered pedophilia. And they have always had that agenda, and it's easy to find if you go and look for it. These trusting organizations like Boy Scouts of America, who have stolen the innocence from our children, from our boys, at a criminal level that has been prosecuted and is factually available for you to look at. All of this is part of a long plan, a plan that has existed. The Boy Scouts have existed for many decades. What happens with priests and this idea of protecting pedophiles, that has been proven, that there are cases in court, that this is not my opinion, these are things that you can find. This idea has been going on for hundreds and thousands of years, and so this is a long game, and humans, third-dimensional humans, don't play long games. They don't play the 500-year game.
We don't even know what we're going to eat next week.
We don't even know what we're going to eat tonight. So the idea that this is a long game, this is off-world interference, it's been off-world interference from the beginning, this is anti-life, trying to kill the life on the planet, starting with the female, because the female is the gestator of life. So now we have legislation saying, you can't call her a female, you can't call her a mother. All of this is not a human agenda. This is an agenda being put forth by off-world interference, and it's coming from the top down. So legislation in 2017, what were you telling me just today? 2017, there was legislation in Washington.
Legislation that was passed that allowed for the changing of the sex at birth. So even if it's clearly a female, you could mark it as male or other. Like
so the
intersex.
documentation would be changed at birth from 2017 in certain states. It
There's
went into law.
19 states currently that are permitting this.
That permit that facts will not be told. So what the fact is at birth is not told, it's subject to opinion.
Well, so one of the things that I was exploring was, why are they so anchored into this idea of gender has nothing to do with your biology? And I see that negativity works with semantics and technicalities. And at one point in time, transgenderism was called transsexual, but sex deals with biology. Gender is the psychological connection with said biology. So they shifted from looking at the body to, oh, it's just in the mind, which is how you identify.
Which is not true.
Exactly.
That is not true. Gender is law. Gender is law. There's more to a man than his penis.
Yes.
There's more to a woman than the uterus. It is, if you've ever had children and raised children, you can see there's a difference in children. There's a difference in boy children and girl children. There's a clear difference that goes beyond your opinion or their psychological orientation. If there is no orientation and they're raised by wolves, they're still different. It's still that same idea. And having raised many children and having many grandchildren, I'm very clear on that, and every other mother is too. This is not myth. This is not something we're making up. Gender is beyond just that. And even in my family, there are cases of people being born hermaphrodite who have both organs underdeveloped. And even in those cases, we're not seeing the kinds of things that they're pushing forward now, and there's no lobby for them.
Yes, and what's interesting is that the percentage of the population that accounts for is infinitesimally small. It's and one of the one of the ways we can see how it's evident is when we spoke about women's sports, and we said, okay, why don't we just have trans sports, have your thing, and there's this reply that, oh, you wouldn't really have too many people attending.
But that would
or
be okay.
to participate.
That's all right, because it's representative of their population.
Yes, but again, where the issue lies is that the push does not match.
Push does not
the
match the reality.
Yeah.
This is an off-world agenda of anti-life, to kill life on the planet by killing the idea of the feminine, of the Mother Earth has already been killed. We have murdered the earth, and it is not sustainable anymore without our assistance. And now the ones who can are trying to run off-world to other planets to do the same. That should not be allowed. We should not let them leave the scene of the crime and then go commit crimes galactically in other worlds and in other experiences when they have not we have not addressed what they have done here. This idea of it coming from the top is very important. It is governments, it is legislators, it is lawmakers who are making these laws that say, like in Canada, that a child who's 12 years old can choose to have a sexual assignment surgery without the permission of the parents, and they have actually put a parent in jail for interfering with that process. These things are coming from the top down. This is not a grassroots organization saying, we need to be noticed. This is not what this is. This is an agenda that's coming forward from the places of power where people have been put into power to further the agenda. We can look at so many things. It is not hard to see that every single nuclear plant that was ever built is on a fault line. What is that? Why is humanity trying to destroy itself? If the nuclear plant goes up, then we all die? This is an agenda from the top down. Why is it that everything that, for the decades, the last 30 years, GMO foods have been destroying the earth, the crops, and the food, and the integrity of the food, and then forcing farmers to pay for that? That is not coming from a grassroots organization waving to get their attention. This is coming from legislatures, judicial, who are enforcing it, and then lawmakers. This is coming from the top down, and it's the long plan. So GMO 30 years ago was just an idea with Monsanto. Now in India, thousands of people have committed suicide because their land is no longer any good and they can't produce from it, and there's no option for them. That in America, all the small farmers were put out of business because the wind blew patented material onto their lands, and the courts upheld the right of the patent owners from Monsanto. And now Monsanto has been sued and been bought by Bayer Aspirin in Germany, which is where it came from originally, which are the people who also were in the World War II were creating biological weapons. The biological weapons that have come through our society, like AIDS, bird flu, mad cow disease, these are all biological triggers that were made by men who had labs and had the ability to distribute them worldwide. This is from the top down. This is from World Health Organization, from World Monetary Groups, all the way down to the present day experiences. So it's important to say that we're in the middle of a paragraph. So whatever you're seeing, you're in the middle of the story. Mm-hmm. So this idea to push people forward into accepting, to allowing their mothers not to be called mothers, to pretend that there's no global warming even though the ice caps are melting, to pretend that 9/11 was what they presented when nothing ever happened, but we became more imprisoned. We became more imprisoned when somebody else went and did something. Did somebody else go and do something? Or was that a top-down idea that imprisoned us even more? Then we have the pandemic, which imprisoned us even more. And then now there's this idea of a controlled money collapse. We're in the middle of a controlled money collapse right now, where the government's saying, you can get more, just apply for another loan, and then we'll give it to you. This is all a very clear manipulation of off-world energies that are a long hand. Do you have a question?
I do. I don't want to digress too much from the overall topic, but I was wondering, for women, for women looking to step into and experience the reality of being the divine feminine and what respect you should experience from the world through that. What is a tangible perspective or way of being or actions that you recommend for women to step into their authority and power in the world and in the respect of their dynamics of their lives and their relationships, etc.? How should they move forward from this point going forward now, with the clear understanding of what has been done to suppress them, but also where they're going and what you're looking to reclaim or step back into?
I'm very glad that you asked that question, because we are actively helping women move into this understanding of power. But I want to also point out that part of what has happened is that we have been mixed with the anti-life, with the invasion that came into our planet. And what has happened is there is a self-sabotage from within that people have to understand, that it's not just exterior, although it is exterior. It begins first we have to put down the darkness inside of us that has come in through our lineage over the many millennia that we have been on the earth with this anti-life aspect. And that aspect of us is running into the fire. That aspect of us is playing in the traffic. And so, what I mean by that is that we do a lot of things ourselves to ourselves. We make a lot of choices that are not in our best and highest interest. So what we encourage you to do is get the symbol, which I don't know if you can see one, we have one here, the symbol that is of the sun logo, and use that symbol to help focus your energy into wanting to be in balance. Remember, many women are walking, dangling off 5-inch heels. They're not, they're literally off balance. And then many people are busy, as humanity in general, thinking that they're not enough, thinking their children aren't enough, thinking their lives are not enough, thinking they should be greater than they are. And because of that, they're attaching things to themselves. So someone called me a few weeks ago and said he was in Miami. And he said, if I were on a spaceship, if I were from another planet and I landed here, I would be communicating back to my spaceship saying, this species is so unusual. They cut themselves open and stuff rounded objects in themselves. They stuff things in all of their places where there's no orifice. They actually cut themselves and stuff things in themselves that are globe-like. And of course, I knew what he was talking about, but this comes from a deep urge for humanity in general, not just women, to think that we are not enough, that we must be more than what we are, that whatever we are is not great enough to handle whatever it is that we want in our lives, because we have been made to feel that way, that we have been, so to say, raped, pillaged, and plundered, and then told, you're nothing after you've taken everything. So our greatest advantages have been used against us. The fact that we can birth life is the huge gift that only women have. Men do not birth life. So only women have this gift, and this is used against us. So the way in which we would begin to talk to people is to look at the power, the symbol. The symbol itself has power. This is an ancient symbol of the divine feminine, and ask to have honor, respect, and gratitude in your life. Begin to call for honor, respect, and gratitude, and you will begin to see that the people who disrespect you fall away, because you're now asking to be respected. The people who dishonor you, and your own dishonor of self. The picture of a woman being dragged to the door holding onto someone's leg while he leaves does not have to be you. That is not an honorable picture. That is not the way that we should want to represent ourselves, that we are so desperate that when someone does not have our interests at heart, that we insist stringently. This is not the way it should be. So the idea to answer that question would be that we would encourage you to begin to call in your own life for honor, respect, and gratitude of self. That will change everything. Your choices, your friends, your relationships, your lovers will change as you begin to think thoughts you've never thought before. If you have been thinking all your life, I want honor, respect, and gratitude, I'm sure you have it. I think that, and I certainly have it, and I'm requiring it in all of my relationships. And relationships that don't meet that don't become something we relate to. It becomes something that is not a relationship. So that's what I have to say about that.
I have a question for Tavares. What is your experience and perspective from working hand in hand with multiple people who are reclaiming the power within the divine feminine in their everyday life, and how that affects you being a masculine? Do you experience any let me not even say it that way. What is your experience and how great is it?
Well, I'm telepathic, so I was able to pick up on that thought. You're like, I'll hold back. And I definitely get what you're saying, and it's so funny that you said that, because I was going to present something to Laota, because that perspective needs to be shared, where we have lived in a world for so long where men have been the dominant force, and there has been no true consideration for the feminine. And moving, like I mentioned earlier, I understand that we are moving through time and space where the balance must be restored. You know, the galactic universal energies are supporting this idea, and it's happening in our DNA. And for the male who has been brought up in a dominant male society, you know, it's quite an interesting, it's quite fascinating, because, for example, clearly, I work with Laota, and she is the trailblazer for this movement of bringing forth the divine feminine on the planet. And I can see, well, for one, when you live within the universal laws and principles, you know, that helps balance everything out. That helps put one into a sense of congruency with this concept. And I know that within me, I have both masculine and feminine properties. However, I'm a male. And I know in everything else has masculine and feminine. And I know everything, unless you came out of a test tube, you came from a woman. You know, this, and the idea of what the female represents is very sacred. The idea of what the mother represents in terms of the planet and the embodiment within the human vessel is sacred. You know, so I see it as, look, I am moving into correction. I'm moving back into my original design when I can not see a woman as a threat because she has some juice or some power, or she can do something that I'm not capable of doing. And that's part of the trick. You know, we've been taught to be very envious of others and those who have what we don't, and somehow been tricked to see ourselves as less than, where everyone has their role, everyone has their position. I will also say that it has not been an easy walk in the park, because even though there's a predominant part of me that I see the truth of this, I know this is what needs to be done, in my DNA and the influence of the collective consciousness on the planet, there's still that pull to be a man, you know? And so I have to fight against that. I have to literally pull my sword out. And when I see that type of superiority, dominance, or really what it is fear. Fear, being afraid of the woman and what she represents. I have to pull out my sword and chop that down, which is, that way I don't become the enemy. You know, that way I'm not reliving what some of my ancestors did and allowed or permitted to happen. So for me, it's been very empowering because I see the beauty in when you give the appropriate consideration and respect and honor to the divine feminine. Oh man, life looks really glorious. You know, my relationship with Laota is like my bestie right here, you know, and what she represents, and being able to provide support in such a way, to give reference. I think about nature and the algorithms within nature, and when I see a tree, I see both masculine and feminine. I see this driving force reaching up to the sky, and then I see the Fibonacci with the branches spiraling up, you know, that feminine aspect, you know. So I'm in my right place and it feels pretty great, and I encourage all men to embrace the divine feminine within themselves in a balanced way, which when you do that, that allows you to have more respect for the divine feminine externally, you know. Be more in tune with your emotions, you know. Be a little more right-brained, to tap into that creativity. We'll talk about stand on your left leg for balance, you know, is the polarities. There's so many different ways, but it has been nothing less than growth and expansion and empowerment to be able to put down that fear within myself and recognize it for what it is.
This then makes him the divine masculine. This is what then brings forth the divine masculine to the forefront in our world, because we are both divine in our balance.
Yes.
But there's balance in honor, respect, and gratitude on both sides. It is not as if there's only, women are only to be honored and men are not. That's not the case. There is, the only way to balance is honor, respect, and gratitude to all. Consideration for everyone, for our children, for everyone. Even in this idea of the current situation with transgender in sports, in teams, you know, to overlook the biological history of the person playing sports is absurd. Why would you overlook the fact that a person was a man for 15 years and then decided to be a woman, and then you put him in with a woman and steal their victories, steal their hopes and their dreams that they only had amongst themselves? This is more bullying, more brutalizing, more suppression of women. Like, I'm gonna suppress you in your volleyball game. You know, it's not enough that I suppress you at school or suppress you. I gotta come into your game and suppress you.
I think what I like to point out is you stated this has been going on for millennia. However, entering into the sports arena, I think it's very clear for everyone to see it's sports, you know? It's very universal, and it's happening at every level. It's happening in high schools, colleges, even in the larger world sports.
It is not that we are so much in support of competition as we are in support of wholesomeness and correctness and what is right and what is not. If you have a child who's 4 years old and the 4-year-olds are in ballet class and they can only jump so high, and you bring in a 6-year-old or another 4-year-old with different biology and they win every jumping high contest, does that then make your girl child feel that she is great at what she's doing within her fair ground? Or is she now damaged to think that she can never overcome or never achieve something that she is not, the biological equivalent is not there to show her? There's no opportunity for success. And then what happens to her DNA when she does not achieve victory, when she has no success, when every obstacle is put in her path, and then she then has children and births children with that level of experience in their DNA? What does that produce 5 generations later? We were already born in captivity. We've all been raised in passivity. Should we remain passive in the face of any of this? Should we remain passive in the face of any injustices in our world? Do we not have the voice to call for freedom? Do we not have we been silenced by the male domination from the top down, just because the courts legislated, just because health organizations tell us we have to have something we don't want. Should we be pushed around? Should we allow ourselves to just walk quietly into the gas chamber?
No, however, that appears to be the case because people feel like they have something to lose or do not want to be socially castrated, so to say.
And that's another thing. This whole idea is, what good is it to be part of a social system that will not protect you? If they will oust you, fine. I'm ousted.
I see your heresy is showing. You're an inner heretic.
If the society we are in, if the families that we are in, if the people who are in charge of our schools, if those who are our legislators, if those who we have voted into office will not support us, what good are they?
So, to that, a question for you, for people who are listening, who have children, and there's a lot happening in the school system in terms of conditioning and programming. What advice would you give to them in terms of navigating with children and maintaining the truth, essentially?
I will share with you what I actually factually did, is I did not allow my children to participate in that, and gave them an environment with like-minded people so that they would not be contaminated by the drugs that were given to children. We see, during the time where my children were being homeschooled, we were seeing children being turned into serial killers, and they're still being turned into serial killers.
Yes.
Right now, the statistics are that most children, over 25,000 children, have had incidences in the last 2 years of someone trying to hurt them in school, because this is what our schools are producing, serial killers. And we have all the facts and data to show it. So it is, if we cannot send our children safely to a place where they will not be drugged or made to think that they must have some shot because they will kill their parents or hurt their families or their grandmothers, then maybe they don't need to go. I personally opted not to send my children to school. When they insisted, then I allowed them to go. But only after they were old enough to already have the foundational understanding of what to eat and what to think, and not to allow someone to put their patented material into them without permission from whoever was in charge of them, which was me. So not to allow that to take place, because it can only end up the way we see it. Our children are being trained to be drug addicts, so they come out of school already prepared to get high every day and lay around, and they're perfectly designed to collect a check from the government. And they don't really want to do anything else, because the drugs they've been taking all of their lives. They started putting children on drugs in first and second grade, and they take them all the way until they start taking legalized marijuana and legalized alcohol and legalized vaping and all of that. And so now we have produced a society of addicts. And in that passivity our world is living in, we have created people that we don't actually enjoy being around and don't like, and who cannot go out on their own and produce. So there you have it. Yes.
Do you have or can you provide a affirmation or meditation where we can do to call forth the divine feminine and to strengthen our will towards this movement of supporting and calling forth the divine feminine?
Yes, it is so important to affirm what it is you want to see. One of the most powerful laws in the universe is that you get what you call for. Call for the power of the divine feminine to come into your world and to bring balance through honor, respect, and gratitude. Call for the power of the divine feminine to come into your world and bring the power of honor, respect, and gratitude. Let it start with you. You call for the power of the divine feminine, which is life itself. Call for life itself to come into your world and bring balance as if you were walking on the earth. Bring balance and power to you through honor, respect, and gratitude of self first. Say that 3 times, as often and as much as possible. This could not be said too much. Whether you're male or female, every male is 50% divine feminine, and every male has the opportunity to be the divine masculine. To look around you and see what is overlooked in our world, how people treat each other, how our boys are treated, how our girls are treated. Is this an appropriate way for us to live? Or are we in the same condition of the planet not being able to sustain itself? Humanity must help humanity. At this point, we must help ourselves. It is our planet. Nobody's going to help us if we're not willing to help ourselves. There is no mystery experience coming in. There's no superhero with a cape on who's going to come and protect us from us. It is our will to stand up that will give us the power. When we call with enthusiasm and will for the power of the divine feminine, that call alone gives us the power. It gives us energy. It gives us strength to stand up within our own experiences and navigate our way out of situations that are uncomfortable and difficult for us. You are encouraged to do that. Call for the truth as well. Every day, start your day calling for the truth, calling for the divine feminine. The law in this universe is you get what you call for. And fasten your seatbelt. When you call for truth and the time for lies, you're calling for war.
Also, thank you so much. I feel that this is a very empowering way to end the podcast. And I certainly feel that there needs to be a part 2 because we have so much more content to go into. So for those who are chimed in on the Instagram, this will be on the YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe, click that notification bell, Laota of the Sun on YouTube, and like and share with your friends. Any final thoughts, Laota?
If there were one thing that you would do for another, first do it for yourself. If you would save a child from having their victories stolen, save your own victories from being stolen. If you would keep one person from feeling like they lived a life of sacrifice and there was nothing better than that, keep yourself from a life of sacrifice by making choices that keep you free. Call for honor, respect, and gratitude of self.
And we conclude this with In Location Veritas, with honor, respect, and gratitude.
Thank you. In Location Veritas, honor, respect, and gratitude.